Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this very special webinar for St. Columba School on the careers of the future and transferable skills. My name is Arya Majumdar. I am the Dean of Admissions and Outreach at OP Jindal Global University. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I trained as a lawyer at NUJS Calcutta for 5 years and then went on to become a corporate lawyer in various parts of the world, including New York, London, and even New Delhi. We will be now, over the last 7 years, I've been teaching at OP Jindal Global University. And as part of my job over there, I'm also handling the admissions. So the format of this webinar is going to be fairly simple. I'm going to spend about 15 to 17 minutes on an initial talk about the careers of the future and transferable skills. And then I'm happy to take questions. If you have any questions for me about the careers of the future, about what skills you should be looking to evolve, or anything about admissions this year, perhaps next year, feel free to write them down, and I will try and answer as many questions as I can. Right? With that, I hope you are all at home. I hope you're all safe and you're in the best of health. As students, faculty, staff, and members of the greater education community, we may all have recognized the importance of staying engaged, but at the same time looking to the future with optimism and a sense of possibility during these extraordinarily difficult times for our country and the world. While we remain in isolation and confinement, we have remained in isolation and confinement, and it seems that we will have to remain in isolation and confinement in the coming days, many of us are facing difficulties, including managing daily life under lockdown, caring for our family members and loved ones, and maintaining our physical and mental well-being. However, in the midst of this crisis, we should find solace in renewing our commitment to our respective areas of work, interest, even studies. At the same time, we could also seek out new and unexplored subject areas, including the ability to connect and work remotely. Now, as people adapt to working remotely and to achieving efficiency while doing so, many new economic opportunities will arise, and so will the demand for a new kind of workforce. As more and more people are forced to work online and remotely, companies and employees are developing new skills and comfort levels with technology. Today, I'm able to speak to you through the wonder of technology, something that we wouldn't have even tried perhaps last year. Companies will learn what jobs really need to be done and may even attempt to re-engineer the workplace. This will result in many jobs being cut and redefined, and some careers may vanish entirely. We know that businesses will be reshaped in the future in a post-coronavirus world. So how do you prepare yourself for a brave but uncertain future? So today we'll be talking about some unconventional careers and some key skills that may be useful for your careers in the future. Now, have you heard of this Swedish gentleman by the name of Felix Kjellberg? I'm assuming not. How about his actual name, or what we know him by, about PewDiePie? Now, you know who PewDiePie is. He's a YouTube gamer. People view his videos, but first, before viewing his videos, must watch an ad or two, right? Now, watching these ads contributes to his revenue. He makes anywhere between 1.5 lakhs to $1.4 million a month. India's Bhuvan Bam is believed to earn anywhere between 3 to 4 lakh rupees for each of his BB Vines video on an average. Chiara Ferragni, Italian fashion blogger, known for her blog The Blonde Salad, was ranked first on the Forbes top fashion influencers list. She takes home about $8 million from her blog, and she's recently set up her own shoe business. So 10 years back, the idea of a career gamer or a YouTuber or a social media influencer, they didn't exist. In fact, even now, your parents and your teachers will consider gaming to be a pastime, will consider Instagram to be a distraction. A distraction from what? Your core activity, which we consider to be studies. Now, these examples of PewDiePie and Bhuvan Bam aren't to encourage you all to become YouTubers. For every one Bhuvan Bam, there are thousands, perhaps even millions of people who've tried and failed. However, these are just examples of an ever-changing world, of what could be a career and what careers will eventually die out. It is said that 85% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 have not been invented yet. What this means for young millennials such as yourself is that there is a high degree of uncertainty as to which jobs are here to stay, which are coming up on the horizon. And in this scenario, how do you prepare yourself for this future, right? The first step is to dissociate your training from your career. Now, we've all seen the movie Three Idiots. In there, we're looking at a scene where Amir Khan is remarking about engineers wanting to go on to do, an MBA after their engineering degree. And that's what engineers usually do. They appear for the CAT, go on to do an MBA, and eventually become an investment banker. So why did they study engineering at all? There is hardly a correlation between engineering and investment banking, except that they both require a high quantitative aptitude. Take Steve Jobs, for example, the founder and chairman, former chairman of Apple. He had a liberal arts degree, not in computer science. Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, doesn't have an MBA. In fact, he has a BA in English. He applied to Harvard 10 times, Harvard Business School 10 times, and he failed each time. Closer to home, like I mentioned, I trained as a lawyer for 5 years, then practiced as a lawyer across New York, London, Delhi for 7 years. Now the job that I do requires more people skills than lawyering skills. I'm assuming you've all seen The Big Bang Theory. Mayim Bialik, one of the actresses on that show, she earned her PhD in neuroscience from the University of California and then went on to act as a neuroscientist on the show. Rebel Wilson actually has a law degree and moved on to acting as well. Sandeep Sridharan owns a restaurant in Mumbai called Modern Coastal. He started out as a consultant and later switched paths to the culinary arts. Pragya Bhatt trained as a software engineer, worked in the IT industry for more than 8 years before she now teaches yoga full time. Even Kenny Sebastian has a bachelor's degree in visual arts, and now he's known to us as a world-class stand-up comedian. So what I'm trying to tell you is that your school education should provide you with a wide enough grounding in a variety of subjects. Your college education should provide you with a bit of specialization, but that specialization does not necessarily have to define you. What you are trained in does not necessarily have to be your career. In other words, we have to learn how to be flexible and look out for opportunities as and when they come. That's the first step. The second step, and this is where the core of our webinar really is that we need to develop key skills which are transferable across sectors and functions. Now, different people have many different ideas on what these skills should be, but I want to give you 7 skills, 7 core skills which I think are invaluable for the future. The first is an intellectual curiosity. To develop an intellectual curiosity and urge to learn new things continuously. What this does is it leads to an acquisition of general knowledge of the world around us and how it works. But more importantly, it develops skills to ask questions as to what is it that I'm observing and why does this thing behave in the way it does. Now, it could be something as simple as, in the morning, you witness a bright orange ball rising in the sky in the east, and that orange ball quickly turns yellow. Now, we know it's the sun, but the idea of asking, what am I looking at and how does it work, are key indicators of intellectual curiosity. And that really lies at the core of the scientific method of inquiry, which has led us to huge developments in technology, in society, in politics, and even in economics. The second key skill is that of critical thinking. Now, this is a natural progression from having an intellectual curiosity. Now that you've started observing things around you and you start questioning why things are the way they are, we now begin to apply that knowledge to our decision-making process. at the core of critical thinking is a very, very simple idea. Assume nothing. Once you start at this position of assuming nothing, you can then start questioning everything. Once you start questioning everything, you start collecting answers and start collecting data, which will both support and perhaps even disprove what you're trying to say, what you're trying to decide at. Then, based on your data, you take a decision taking into account multiple perspectives, including that of the people who will be affected by that decision. Let me take an example. On the 23rd of March, our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, he called for the entire country of 1.3 billion people to go under lockdown. And we have been in varying parts of the country, we are still under lockdown. For example, I know that the lockdown will probably continue in Delhi. It is definitely continuing for us here in Sonipat. But did we take into account all the perspectives of all the people who will be affected? Perhaps, perhaps not. Perhaps we didn't take into account the plight of migrant workers who till date are still walking home, and it's been months. Perhaps if we take into account various perspectives and we assume nothing and we start from that position, perhaps our migrant workers may have been in a better state. Of course, any decision that you take when you're starting with the position of assuming nothing, any decision that you take, you must always question your own logic, right? So when I say that question everything, include yourself in that. The third skill that I have is, or what I would like you to have, is interpersonal skills. Now, eventually, we'll have systems where computers will regularly talk to each other. We've already had a glimpse of the future in the idea of the Internet of Things, where your internet-connected smart fridge will order for eggs and milk from grocers the moment it senses that you're low on milk and eggs. But social interactions, including this one, that what we're having right now, they're very difficult to automate. And it is likely that people will have to continue to talk to each other. The key to great interpersonal skills is communication. What will matter is not only how you communicate your ideas, but also how you negotiate and influence people. And the trick to this is to listen to what others have to say. Too many times we are caught up in putting our own point across without realizing that the person who I'm speaking with may not be receptive, may not be open to my ideas, in which case we need to listen to them to figure out how best we can position our ideas that we're putting to them. The fourth skill is of versatility. We've talked about this earlier on in the past, where we don't know what opportunities are going to come up and that we must dissociate our training from our career. We're bound to see changing trends in the market from here on in, especially after this global pandemic. What a successful person then needs to do is to be able to adapt to changes in a quick manner. This requires a lot of determination to ride the wave and use new opportunities. It also includes the ability to constantly reskill and upskill oneself and cater to changing times. For this, versatility, being versatile, is absolutely essential. The fifth key skill is that of diversity and cultural intelligence. In a world where everything is connected, people have greater access to mobility, both physical and intellectual. As a result, we end up in a world and our workplace which is more diverse and open. For example, in OP Jindal Global University, about 20% of our staff, of our faculty members, are non-Indians, and they come from all parts of the world, including the United States, China, Russia, Japan, Nigeria, Australia, right? And all of them come with different belief systems. All of them come with their own set of ideas, their own perspectives, their own morals, their own ethics, right? It is vital that we have the skills to understand, respect, and work with others despite differences in perhaps race or culture, language, age, gender, sexual orientation, or political or even religious beliefs. It's important to have that diversity and cultural intelligence where one accepts the fact that different people will have different perspectives and ideas and morals based on where they're from. The sixth key skill is that of service orientation. Now, it might be easier to hand over lots of our processes to machines in the future, but at the end of the day, the human touch is something that people will always want. Now, I could have recorded this lecture and I could have simply sent it to you as a YouTube link, but I don't want to do that because I know for a fact that having a live person on the other side of your screen is something that will make a difference. Customers will still want to deal with actual humans. Service orientation is the ability and the desire to anticipate, recognize, and meet other people's needs, sometimes even before those needs are articulated. Service oriented people focus on providing satisfaction and making themselves available to others. Now, this was defined as actively seeking ways to help others. Let me ask you a question. And I don't need the answers to this. This is just a question for your own benefit. How much do you assist those on your team, your superiors, your peers, your friends, and or people that you come across on a daily basis, perhaps even your family? How much are you known for that? Service orientation doesn't necessarily have to remain in the workplace. It starts at home. How much are you known for helping your own family out? In the everyday world around us, services are and have been commonplace as long as civilized history has existed and will continue to be crucial in the future. The last key skill that I would like you to bear in mind is that of an ethical aptitude. We shouldn't forget one of these key behavioral traits that separate us from animals, that of ethics. How we apply ethical principles to professional situations speaks a lot about who we are as individuals. And these ethical decisions can be very, very difficult. I can give you an example from my own life. I was working as a corporate lawyer for a very large South Korean iron and steel company. And they wanted to acquire land in a state called Orissa to set up an iron and steel factory. We were asked by them, we were advising them, and we were asked by them to go to the place where they had acquired the land to talk to the villagers. When we got there, we ended up in a massive problem. These villagers came out with sticks and stones wanting to hurt us. Now the question was why? It seems that the land that was being taken away by the government without any recourse to justice. They felt that the government should not be taking away their land for this steel project. So now the question arises is that these people will be out of land, they will be compensated, but they don't have anywhere else to go. They don't have any other means of livelihood. They don't have any other skills except for agriculture. So where do they go? Which is why they were very, very angry. Now, here's the ethical question that the company was faced with. Should they care about the farmers that they're displacing? Right? So whether we care about more than just profits, whether we care about sustainability, whether we care about how our decisions affect other people around us, that matters. Of course, as I mentioned and as I demonstrated, ethical decisions are often the most difficult ones to take, and developing the skills to be determined enough to take an ethical decision, no matter how unpopular, becomes really, really important. Now, those were my 7 key skills that I believe to be absolutely crucial if we are to survive in a brave but uncertain world, right? We've come to the end of this talk. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. You should be able to see the questions tab on the GoToWebinar app on the right-hand side. Feel free to ask any questions that you would like right now. I already have a couple of questions. Albert Kalampadan asks, can students of class 11 join the university? Absolutely not, Albert. I'm very, very sorry, but the government of India requires you to complete your studies at a school, get a class 12 board result, and then come to study in a university. However, what we do have is something called the Jindal Global Summer School, or also known as the Aspire India Scholars Program. Now, the Aspire India Summer Scholars Program is going to be held this year in winter, sometime in December, January. Exact details, if you want, we can forward those exact details to you. What this is a winter. It usually is held in the summer, but this time because of the global pandemic and the nationwide lockdown, we've had to shift it from the summer break to the winter break. We don't think students should be able to come to our campus before August. So we're doing the summer school in the winter break, and feel free to come to our university. It's a 2-week long program, and you'll be taught by faculty members who regularly teach in the university, and you'll get a sense and a feel of what it is like to actually stay on a university campus, to experience the campus life, and to experience university level teaching. I have a second question. Keshav Khurana asks, what to do if we are interested in HM? Keshav, I'm not so sure what HM means. So if you want to rephrase your question, please feel free to do so. Any other questions that you have right now, please feel free to ask them right now. And I'm happy to answer them. Hotel management. Okay. Now, Keshav, the question of hotel management and a future career in hotel management, in my view, right now, seems a little bit problematic. I'll tell you why. In 2015, Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, he did something called a TED Talk. Now, a TED Talk is a lecture by an expert or somebody who's very well renowned in something. And his TED Talk was not on computers or anything. His TED Talk was on it was called The Next Epidemic. And he said that when he was growing up, in the 60s and 70s in the United States, his family was told by the government of the United States to build a bunker, an underground shelter, which could withstand or which could provide security from a nuclear holocaust, a nuclear attack. In the TED Talk, Mr. Bill Gates says that now the problem is not of nuclear holocaust. The Cold War is over, and I don't think there is much threat of a nuclear attack anymore, or at least not that much of a threat. Now, Mr. Bill Gates in 2015 said that the biggest threat that we have now is our global pandemics. And global pandemics, he suggests, are going to be a problem moving forward as well, and that the COVID-19 coronavirus is not the end, and that there will be more and more such pandemics. Now, I realize that that's a very, very difficult situation that we are in. And that's a very bleak future, I agree. But think about it. Every time there is a pandemic or an epidemic, the one thing that stops is movement of people. And once movement of people stops, the hospitality industry, including airlines, trains, buses, hotels, tourist attractions, they all become fairly problematic. They all become fairly redundant. I'm sure that there are hundreds and thousands of hotels across the world right now that are empty. So my recommendation, Keshav, is that if you are looking for a career in hotel management, think of an alternative career which can possibly provide the same kind of challenges and will require the same kind of skills. Let's take a moment to figure out what are the skills required in hotel management, primarily amongst which is service orientation, the ability to anticipate other people's needs and to meet them even before they want or they articulate or they say that they want something, right? So are there other industries that have or that require the same kind of skills? Absolutely. Any service industry, any industry that requires dealing with people on a daily basis will require the same skills. So while your aspiration and your ambition to get into the hotel management industry is very, very commendable, Keshav, I would recommend that you keep that and you have that ambition, but develop skills that can also be transferred to other service industries as well. All right. I have another question from Divya Manchanda, who asks, is an MBA degree enough? Because almost everyone from every field has it. And if someone wants to, would it be better to get one from an international university? Now, Divya, that's a very good question. And I think a very pertinent one, because you're right, everyone seems to have an MBA degree nowadays. But the question is where to get it from. Now, at the outset, you should know that it is not necessary to have an MBA degree in order to have a successful career. Many people I know are very, very successful in their various walks of life, and they don't have MBA degrees. In fact, I would say that much of what you learn in MBA is um, is very, very relevant, but the true learning happens at work as well. Now, whether you want to do an MBA is a question of whether you see yourself in a leadership position somewhere down the line, right? Um, for example, when you start out in any industry, you pretty much start out at the bottom, and your job is restricted to doing the things that other people tell you. Now, if you want to get yourself in a position where you get to tell people what to do, then yes, perhaps an MBA would be a good boost. Now, whether or not you should do it from an international university depends entirely upon two things. One, the ability to pay for an international university, and second, the ability to gauge whether that international university is actually reputed. Because what an MBA degree actually does is it provides you with a brand name. So, for example, right now, all of you are students at St. Columbus School, right? Which means that you will carry the tag and you will carry the reputation that St. Columbus School has for the rest of your lives. Now, suppose if you didn't go to St. Columbus School, would you be able to carry the same kind of reputation? Absolutely not. So where you get your MBA degree from makes a whole lot of difference. So for example, if you are looking to do an MBA from an international university, figure out how reputed it is. A easy way to figure out whether a university is good or not is to figure out their rankings. Now, there are three ranking agencies that most universities engage with. There is the ARWU, the Academic Ranking of World Universities. Second is Times Higher Education, or THE. And the third is Quacquarelli Simons, or QS. These are the three international ranking agencies. And when you are choosing a university to go to, you should be looking at these three rankings, these three ranking bodies, right? Now, this applies to whether you're looking to do higher education abroad or in India. Now, on the point of higher education abroad, I just want to bring this up that this year and perhaps next year, I would say it's a really bad idea to go outside of India. Primarily because it's not just the lockdown or the quarantine or these kind of issues that have come up. What's happening right now in the United States is absolutely terrible. That they're now heading up to almost 100,000 deaths, and I believe they've already crossed 1 million cases of coronavirus. In these situations, I don't think it's a very wise choice, or it could be a huge problem in terms of your health. But additionally, the news that we're receiving across the board from from the United States is two. There are two critical pieces of news. One is that the United States has stopped giving out H-1B visas, or they're planning to stop giving out H-1B visas, which means that getting a job after you finish studies in the United States is going to be very, very problematic. The second is that a large number of United States citizens are unemployed. 3 million right now are unemployed in the US. Now, when an employer in the US looks to fill a vacancy, they look at the CV of a United States citizen and a non-US citizen. Chances are they will most likely take the US citizen, assuming the two CVs are equal, which means that going to an international university is great, just not right now. Wait for a few years, right? Divya has another question. How can someone improve their profile for universities like IIM or SPJN Global? All right. Well, I can tell you from the admissions perspective that most universities, or most good universities, look for a well-rounded individual, right? So not just academics. I can tell you myself, my own story. I did science in 11 and 12. I nearly failed in class 11, nearly failed, right? But that doesn't mean that academics is everything, right? So universities nowadays, they ask the question, okay, are you good in academics? Do you have other interests? Let's say, do you have a hobby? Do you have a sport? Do you play a musical instrument? Do you have a pastime that you're really engaged with? Are you engaged in community service? Do you look out for other people, right? Have you developed any further skills apart from your school, right? So these are the questions that a lot of these universities ask. And I would recommend, if you are interested in something, whether it's a musical instrument or a sport, community service and leadership, social service, you name it, follow that passion. You never know, in the quest of becoming a well-rounded individual, you never know when that pastime could possibly become a career. Consider PewDiePie. I mean, I'm sure his original career option wasn't a YouTube gamer, right? But somewhere down the line, he realized that he's really good at what he does and can earn money from it, which means that that's now his career, right? So my recommendation is to figure out how to become a better, well-rounded individual, and more importantly, how to demonstrate it, right? So, for example, if you're doing a course on Coursera or Udacity or edX or any of these online, course providers, make sure you follow up with it. Make sure you get that certificate at the end so that you can put it in your CV saying that, hey, listen, I did the short-term course during the lockdown. I did the short-term course on this particular subject from Coursera or Udacity. All right. Okay. There don't seem to be any other questions. If you have any other questions right now, feel free to um, to to ask them right now. You will notice that there are a few handouts. I'm not going to talk about OP Jindal at all. I don't want to talk about the university at all. This is about you guys. This is about your careers and skills that you should be having. But as and when you feel like it, take a look at some of the handouts that we have. There's this one handout which talks about all the programs that OP Jindal Global University has. Feel free to take a look at it. If there are any other questions, now is a good time. Okay, right. We have another one coming in from Divit. Does a degree in economics subject hold a brighter future? Divit, absolutely. The whole world right now runs on economics, on economic principles. Think about it. Anything that you buy or you sell has implications in economics. Day before yesterday, when our Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced what was it, 20 lakh crore stimulus package, again, that's based on economics, right? The fact that 20 lakh crore rupees will be spent by the government on various tax ops, tax reliefs, various loans that will be given across the board to small businesses and MSMEs and for the rural poor, that is based in economics. A fundamental principle of that stimulus is that if we give money to the poor, they will spend it on necessary essential items, such as food, such as electricity, perhaps, such as water, right? Which means that there will be a demand for those things. If there's a demand, then it will be met with supply, and that's how we keep the economy going. So, David, everything is based in economics, and a degree holder in economics would be a great catch for any company anywhere in the world. It might interest you to know that economics nowadays has a high component of statistics and mathematics. For example, we are beginning to take decisions not based on our gut instinct or based on what we feel, but based on data, based on statistics, right? And having statistical skills is an integral part of being an economist. So a number of companies will be hiring or already are hiring economists to figure out what are the economic policies under which they operate, and more importantly, to analyze these policies to figure out where should the company be headed in terms of its strategy, and in terms of its strategy, and of course, figuring out what should be the future policies of the government. Now, if you have an economist on board who can sort of accurately predict what the next economic steps the government is going to take, then your company or your business is in a better position to handle that change. which is why I think economists are going to be in high demand later on, even in the post-coronavirus world. Right? Kshitij Jain asks the future of law. Well, Kshitij, it might interest you to know that even under the lockdown, almost all the courts in the country um, have been operating online through Zoom and other online platforms. So I don't think there's going to be any change in terms of the future of law as a profession. In fact, if anything, um, I'm quite certain you've seen movies like Jolly LLB and Pink, and perhaps even this very old movie in which Sunny Deol is there and he says Tariq pe Tariq. It's a long-standing problem of the Indian judiciary that cases take forever. Now, there are a number of reasons for this problem. One of them being the inadequacy of quality lawyers in the country. So, when you ask me the future of law, I would say that law or the legal profession isn't going away anytime soon. And that in spite of now artificial intelligence and other technology advances, there will continue to be a need for lawyers. But when I say a need for lawyers, bear in mind a need for quality lawyers. For example, the reason why Professor Dr. Madhav Menon, why he set up the National Law School in Bangalore in 1998, was that to provide a better legal education in the hope to providing better lawyers for India. Now, he has been successful, hugely so. After he set up the National Law School in Bangalore, he came to Calcutta and set up the National University of Juridical Sciences, NUJS, which is my alma mater. And I was very, very fortunate to have been taught by him himself. And I can tell you that his passion to create quality lawyers was very, very infectious. And that's what a number of other law schools are trying to do right now. There are about 19 national law schools in the country and a whole slew of private law colleges and law colleges within public universities as well. But not all law schools are the same. Not all law schools can claim to have quality legal education in them. And it's very important that if you are looking to have a future as a lawyer, it's very, very important to select the right kind of law school and to apply to the right law schools. Now, which law schools you want to apply to, I'll leave that to you. I am aware that OP Jindal Global University has a law school which is ranked #1 in India right now, but that should not, but I should not be convincing you to join the Jindal Global Law School. It is entirely your decision, right? All right. But in a nutshell, Kshitij, the future of law is extremely bright. All right. Ansh Gupta says that I've got an email from University of Arizona that it has partnered with OP Jindal Global University for courses, and credit transfer is also possible. What is the scope, and are there any courses also available for high schoolers as well? Ansh, well, first of all, congratulations at being accepted to the University of Arizona. It is one of the top universities in the world. It's ranked in the top 100 in the QS World University rankings, and we are very close partners with them. In fact, the University of Arizona and OP Jindal Global University have been partners since 2009, 2010, and they remain very, very close friends of ours. At the OP Jindal Global University, we've been in talks with the University of Arizona to create what is known as the Gifted program. Now, this is only for students who've been enrolled with the University of Arizona. The idea is that these students who are unable to travel to the United States right now, they come to OP Jindal Global University on a temporary basis. We have partnered with the University of Arizona to figure out what kind of courses they would have in the first year, and we've replicated those courses at the OP Jindal Global University. So anybody who's a student of the University of Arizona comes to our campus, stays with us, lives with us. They are taught by our faculty members and University of Arizona faculty members on a blended in-person come online teaching mode. And once it is safer to travel to the United States, we then bid goodbye to these students when they go to the University of Arizona. the University of Arizona will accept the credits earned at OP Jindal Global University, and that will count towards the degree that the University of Arizona is going to give you. Now, this is only possible with, in a university which has a number of international partners, such as the University of Arizona and ourselves. We have over 250 odd international partners and universities with whom we collaborate on a regular basis. So yes, the credit transfer is possible, and that's how we've structured it. The exact courses, you should be getting an email at some point of time from the University of Arizona as to which courses are going to be made available for you. Are there any courses available for high schoolers? Absolutely not, I'm afraid. You'll have to be a student enrolled with the University of Arizona. But again, like Albert's question right at the beginning, we do have a summer school which is now taking place in the winter, and if you'd like to experience what university education looks like or what it feels like, feel free to apply to our winter program as well. All right. Divya Manchanda is asking quite a few questions. Well, thank you very much. How should we go about if we pursue our education in India, but we want to work abroad? Now, it's increasingly becoming very difficult to work abroad if we are pursuing our education in India. Just make sure, in a nutshell, just make sure that you are choosing a university that is internationally renowned, that is known across the world. So I'm quite certain that there are many universities in India that are well renowned across the world. It's just a matter of choosing which one. That's the first. Second, figure out which countries require what kind of skills or what kind of skilled personnel. So if you look at, let's say, the immigration websites of, let's say, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, etc., you'll find that they all have something called a points-based immigration system or some variation of it. And the points-based immigration system is effectively a way to gauge or a way to find out whether or not a person who wants to immigrate into that country will be a useful worker. Now, that depends upon which sectors they need workers in. For example, I believe that there is a dearth of doctors in, let's say, New Zealand, right? In which case, if your target is New Zealand, you ought to be considering something in the medical profession, right? Divya also asks, what career in management would you suggest which is high paying and involves traveling? Well, Divya, I can tell you for a fact that many jobs are high paying and involve traveling. One of the best is to be a travel writer or a travel blogger. But if we're talking about management, I'd say something in finance or perhaps in investment banking requires, but of course, being an investment banker requires a high quantitative aptitude. And anything that involves money, anything that involves services and a personal touch will involve high payments, high salaries, as well as a lot of traveling. But again, right now, traveling is pretty much out of the question, right? Okay. Are there any courses other than BBA in business management? There are, courses which provide pretty much the same skills and same set of knowledge that the BBA does, and it's in different packages. Of course, at the OPJGU, we only have the BBA program. Of course, there is a 5-year BBA come MBA program as well. But the best thing that you could do is, if you're looking to start your career in business management right from out of school, is to join a good quality BBA program, right? Abha Thomas asks, are CLAT or IELTS scores accepted at the OP Jindal Law School? I'm afraid not, Abha. We only accept the LSAT, the Law School Admissions Test, which is administered by the Law School Admissions Council in the United States. And in India, it is delivered by Pearson VUE. Now, the LSAT has been delayed. Obviously, it's now taking place on the 7th of June. But more importantly, the LSAT can now be taken online from the comfort of your own home. We are using an artificial intelligence-enabled remote proctoring mechanism where you will be able to appear for the LSAT from your own laptops in your own home, while the webcam and microphone are recording what you are saying and doing. So we've moved it entirely online so that you don't have to you don't have to step out of your homes, so that you remain safe, right? So long story short, the CLAT and IELTS scores are not accepted at the Jindal Global University. All right. I'd say we've got another 10 minutes. And if you have any other questions, feel free to ask them now. But if there aren't any other questions, then I'm happy to close it out immediately. I'm just going to wait for a couple of minutes if there are any further questions. All right. Keshav, you seem to be asking a lot of questions today. Thank you very much. Student exchange program in India after class 12. Well, Keshav, there'll be a number of foreign universities who do have, let's say, summer abroad programs where anybody can apply and should be able to, get into a summer abroad program at whatever location these students, these universities are in. But apart from that, a number of Indian universities do have student exchange programs as well. For example, so effectively what we call student mobility takes place in three ways. The first is a short-term study abroad program. This is more or less like a summer school where you go and you spend 2 to 3 weeks at another location. And then you come back to the Indian university. The second is a semester exchange, what you asked, which is an entire semester spent at a foreign university. And third is a dual degree program. A dual degree program is where you would spend, let's say, let's say 3 years or 2 years, let's say, at an Indian university, and then another 2 years at a foreign university. At the end of 4 years, you take home 2 degrees, which is why it's called a dual degree program. Now, it's important if you're looking for student exchange programs, it's important to figure out universities that have a high number of international collaborations. For example, we have study abroad programs with Cornell, with Harvard, with Oxford, with the University of California, Davis campus, even the Columbia even the Columbia Law School, right? We're also planning one with the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. Now, what we've seen is of all these people, we send about 150 to about 200 students abroad every year on semester exchange programs. And what we see is that when they come back from these semester exchange programs, they would have developed fresh skills, fresh perspectives, because at that time, when you're in a semester exchange program, you're not just visiting that other university. What you're doing is you're living the life, right? And once you start living the life in a foreign university, you are now experiencing far newer things than you would when you're just visiting. So it's important to select a university. If, let's say, semester abroad program is something that's high on your priority list, it's important to select a university which has a high number of international collaborators. All right. Divya asks again, lots of questions from her. Which management university is best for high placements? Divya, in India, I can tell you that the IIMs are the best universities for high placements. I'm given to understand that most students from the IIMs, the Indian Institutes of Management, do get placed, across the board every year, right? However, I can tell you that getting into the IIMs is extraordinarily difficult, right? And you'd have to be right on top of your game in terms of your qualitative aptitude, your problem-solving skills, your data analysis. All of this, you have to be on top of your game to be able to get into the IIMs. Now, there are other universities that have very good placements. SP Jain, ISB in Hyderabad, our own Jindal Global, the business school that we have. All of us have very high placements, but again, I'll leave it to you to decide which management university or which management school you should be targeting. A few other questions have come in right now. Job placements after doing 5-year courses in BA LLB. There are primarily four avenues, 4 or 5 avenues of of careers after a 5-year BA LLB. The first is that of a litigator, where you are in front of a judge and you're arguing your case. This is what happens in courts every day. The second is that of a corporate lawyer or a negotiator, where you are arguing in front of your clients and the opposing counsel across the boardroom, and you are helping businesses carry out transactions, right? So that's pretty much the job of a corporate lawyer. The third is that of an activist. When I say activist, I mean somebody who actively tries to bring about social change in India, in their local community, and perhaps even in the world, right? Tomorrow we'll be having a webinar by this gentleman by the name of MC Mehta. Now, Mr. MC Mehta is a very well-known lawyer who pretty much single-handedly changed the whole atmosphere or the whole perspectives on environmental protection in India. So, for example, he pretty much single-handedly changed the way Agra, the city of Agra, treated its industries or treated its businesses. Because what he realized was all these effluents, all these pollutants that were getting into the atmosphere in and around Agra was spoiling the Taj Mahal, right? So he got the Supreme Court to shut down these industries in Agra, particularly the leather tanneries, which were causing huge damage to the Taj Mahal. He did the same thing to save the Ganga as well, the Ganges River, right? Where he got the Supreme Court to tell industries to stop dumping pollutants into the river. Now this is somebody I would call an activist who dedicates their lives to bringing about social change. And of course, the fourth is to go on to do something that involves convincing people, perhaps a diplomat, perhaps a politician. And we've seen a number of lawyers coming out of a BA LLB program or a BBA LLB program that have gone on to not just doing law, but gone on to doing other things. A formidable combination, by the way, in my view, is a BA LLB followed by an MBA, right? Now that gives you a formidable set of skills that you should be able to use in pretty much any walk of life, right? Special abilities required to get into universities like Yale and Harvard. Well, again, I can tell you that depending upon the course, depending upon the program that you're looking at, it can get quite difficult. For example, the Harvard Business School will require a very, very high GMAT or a very high GRE score. Yale, if you're looking at their law program, is one of the most selective in the world. There are thousands of applicants who apply every year, and perhaps only 10 or 15 will get selected. So for these top-notch universities, academics play a huge role. But like I've said before, there is a lot to be said about a holistic, well-rounded individual, right? Divya Kumar asks, what are the career options in humanities subject having economics and maths as a 6th subject? Okay. Divya, if you're taking up humanities, I'd say the world is your oyster, right? Did you know that while engineers and doctors get paid better salaries right at the beginning as freshers, just after they finish college, liberal arts students get paid far more once they enter their 30s. And liberal arts students are far more likely to become CEOs rather than engineers or doctors. The fact that you've taken up humanities speaks volumes for your choice. Now, I know for a fact that this happened even when I was in school, that people who couldn't do science or commerce, they would take up humanities. But I don't think that is the right approach, and I don't think that's the right perspective to have either, because there's a lot to be said about learning about humanities and the social sciences. Because when you're learning about humanities and the social sciences, you're learning as to how people work, how people operate, and how people around you, how the world around you operates. Once you've understood that, then you should be able to take decisions that will affect the world around you. So I would say that there are huge career options after, if you do liberal arts or humanities, having economics and maths. There are so many examples that I mentioned earlier on in my talk. For example, Steve Jobs, right? Not a computer engineer, liberal arts student. Jack Ma, not a computer engineer, BA in English. Elon Musk, the founder of SpaceX and Hyperloop and Tesla, not an engineer, liberal arts in political science. So when we look at how liberal arts is taught around the world, or even in India, there are fantastic universities and fantastic liberal arts schools. I mean, Flame, Ashoka, Shiv Nadar, and dare I mention Jindal. All of them, all of us have really, really good liberal arts schools. And the career options coming out of these could be pretty much anything in the world. What liberal arts, what a study in liberal arts and humanities allows you to do is to imbibe these skills that we just talked about, including having an intellectual curiosity, including having critical thinking, right? So I would recommend, if you have humanities with economics and maths right now in school, I think getting into a liberal arts program at a top-notch university in India would be fantastic for you. All right, and we're almost out of time. There will be a short survey just after we finish this webinar. I would encourage you to fill out that survey. But having said that, thank you so much for coming in today. I'm so glad that we were able to connect. I hope to connect with you even more. Thank you again to St. Columbus for organizing this. And at some point of time, hopefully in the fairly foreseeable future, I'd like to come down and visit your fantastic school at some point. Until then, thank you very much, and do keep in touch. This is Arya Majumdar of OP Jindal Global University. Thank you for your time.